Hi, I'm Tom Stevenson, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm a professor of construction management, and this channel is all about making improvements to the construction industry and learning new things together. Today I'm going to be talking about the 8 areas of waste. This has been a series that I've been working on based on lean construction and waste. Today's is very interesting because of the productivity side. It ties into productivity really well because we're going to talk about wasted motion. And in construction, that's a pretty big deal. You'll see how it affects your income statement, how little things mean big things to your profit. And there'll be things that I'm sure that you didn't realize before. So let's dive in and start looking at that. All right, so the 8 areas of waste that we've been looking at are defects, overproduction, wait time, non-utilized talent, transportation, inventory, and today's topic, motion, and extra process steps, which will be our next topic after we complete motion. So they all go together to spell the word downtime. That makes it a lot easier to remember. I remember when I was trying to get this down, knowing that downtime made it very easy because you want to make it kind of like ingrained that when you're walking a site, when you're observing things, that's like, that's that. That's that. And these are the things I can do to reduce or eliminate that kind of waste. In global productivity, looking at the construction industry, and I don't want to flog a dead horse, so to speak, but we have a lot of waste in construction, and our improvements on productivity have been very limited. This one goes back to 1995. There's others that have been put out by The Economist and varying reliable resources that show going back to like 1960. We barely improved 1% per year, if that. Whereas the rest of the industry has been improving at very often 2 to 3% or more if you talk about agriculture. All right, so we're kind of a laggard in the improvement on productivity. And there's a lot of reasons for that, right? There's a lot of reasons for that. We're highly fragmented, we're project-based, but we do have a lot of opportunities to continue to improve much better than we have at a much better pace than we have in the past. If you look at total waste on construction, and depending how you want to look at waste, direct waste that we are talking about, like wasted motion and defects and that sort of thing, we're at plus 35% waste on construction projects. And I'm not including the aspect of the waste in management of construction projects, which aren't at the end of the day part of the physical project. All right, so let's dive in. So what is wasted motion? Well, you can figure that out, right? Like that's basically any unnecessary movements. And that can mean a lot of different types of movements if you want to get into it. But we'll stick to some pretty clear examples of that. And this really can come into the trade side of things. So if you're a trade contractor or a tradesperson, this today's section really has a lot of impact for you, like opportunity for you, let's just say, of where you can make improvements. And wasted motion, it's tiring. Like it's when you waste motion, it's tiring. I remember when I was a kid and I was making, I'd have to be the laborer and I would basically mix the mortar. I had this really good craftsperson, really good bricklayer, and he was magnificent to watch him, right? He'd have these gloves on. He would come nice, fresh, pressed pants, shirt, and he would leave and he wouldn't be any dirtier. Like he was very neat and clean about whatever he did. And I remember I just kind of threw the blocks up on the scaffold and I was putting them any old which way, because what do I know? I'm a kid. And so he started yelling at me and he said, I have to, and he swore a few times, pick up every one of these. Then he swore a few times again. Once, I'm not picking them up twice. Like if I had them not in the right position, then he had to move it in the right position so he could apply the mortar. We'd call it buttering the blocks, so that he could easily put it into place. He didn't want to do any, why would he want to lift it up if it should have been already lifted up to begin with? And the other aspect is it wasn't any extra effort for me to just put it down the way he wanted it, right? So it really wasn't any extra effort for me. So it's not any extra effort for me. It's basically cutting his work of lifting it in half. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And then if he lays 300 blocks in a day, that's a big deal. That's 300 lifts that he has, and then he's probably not going to get that. He's definitely not going to get that many blocks, but he's also not going to be as tired, right? So this is improvements, basically not just making you work faster. A lot of people with wasted motion, they start thinking, oh, they want me to work faster. It's making you work smarter. It's making everyone work smarter and think smarter, right? So when we think about wasted motion, the impact, it leads to longer project times. We already have not enough skilled trades to go around as it is. Increase the risk of injury due to repetitive, unnecessary movements, like I was saying. Why lift things more times than you need to? Contributes to higher labor costs, lower productivity. An example, workers walking long distances to retrieve tools or materials. Sometimes people will go up to where they need to go, and then they'll look around, and then they'll go back and start bringing their tools. Well, if you already knew a lot of the tools that you need, you could have brought them up in that particular trip. If you got more than one trip of tools, then you could have had one less going back and forth. It's like you're going up the stairs to somewhere, maybe you're just doing small renovation work. This is for everything. It's not just big construction projects. And you come up the stairs and you came up empty-handed. Well, why? Why didn't you bring a few 2x4s with you? They're going to have to come up soon, so you might as well go get them instead of making a special separate trip for them. So it's kind of thinking really in those terms about all of your motion, like my bricklaying mentor from that perspective. So I want to run through an example with a temporary washroom. I want to run through it in detail. If you can this is just a washroom example, portable washroom, and what a difference it makes in cost from a management point of view when you get the right amount. All right. And so I've basically taken it right down to various dollar amounts, and your dollar amounts might obviously different than mine. I'm in Toronto, Canada. Mine might be very similar to big cities in North America in cost, but it can vary. So I've just taken nice even numbers here, but whatever it is, it all works out. Trust me. So we've got one portable washroom case study. And let's say we got electrician costs $100 an hour in direct costs, works 8 hours a day, and we got 10 electricians at the rear of a large site, right? So the total burden cost is $8,000 a day, right? So we've got 8 hours, 8 times 100, that would be 800. We've got 10 electricians, $8,000 a day that we're spending. Let's say they're there for 2 months. Let's say it's just 20 working days a month. We'll make it a nice even number. And so that would be basically 40 working days. 40 times 8, that's $320,000 that we're spending on these electricians. The site is laid out with only one temporary washroom down beside the construction trailer. It's a 5-minute walk around the building, so it's far from when the work's actually being done, with an average 2-minute wait to get into the washroom. So we've got a fairly busy washroom. Each electrician uses the washroom 4 times a day. So that's 40 minutes a day. 4 times 5, 20 minutes, times 2, because you're walking there and back, plus the 2-minute wait times 4. So that adds up to 48 minutes each electrician per day. So we've got 10 electricians, that's 480 minutes. Now, if you want to think about that, there's 60 minutes in an hour. That's really like 8 hours a day is being wasted. So 8 hours a day is being wasted. Really, we're working 80 hours a day total. So it's about 10%. 10% of the time is the walking back and forth and the waiting to get into the washroom. Okay? So we can think about that, right? And I've broken it down step by step. If you're not sure, you can freeze it and you can look at it and think about it and contemplate it, whatever way you want. Okay. So if they're working 40 days, and that's basically the 40 times 800. So it's $800, right? Times 40, $800 a day, times 40, 10% of the 8,000. That's going to be $32,000 wasted. All right, so that's $32,000 wasted in that 2-month period, the 40 days, 20 days each month. It's a lot of waste. Now, I'm thinking if you look here, you can sort of see in this particular site, you can see a washrooms up here. You can see another portable washrooms there. So they've got them close to where the work is going on. You know, you're not going down and around. They've got other washrooms down closer on the ground level too, spread out on this project. They're not skimping on the actual washrooms. They're making sure that they have washrooms close to where the work is being done. So this is not an issue. This is actually very good here in this particular site, right? So it would pay dividends to install, in this example, another portable washroom. And let's say it costs $800 a month for the portable washroom. And these ones in Toronto, they're probably around $600 to $800 a month, even with the little bit of, they have now the water and the sink in it that you can kind of wash your hands. We are getting better with our washrooms, and Occupational Health and Safety Act regulations are improving and requiring more of these fully, you know, like a real washroom. We got to have some dignity for our construction workers too, and that's probably a whole topic for another video. But for sure, at minimum, you want to have easy access to the washrooms. You want to follow whatever your Occupational Health and Safety Act and regulations currently are and have been upgraded to, as this is changing in a lot of different locations. But $800 a month, right? Somebody probably had the bright idea, oh, I don't want to get another washroom. It's going to cost extra money, right? And we're going to save $800 a month, right? And so you're thinking, well, $800 a month, 2 months, $1,600. Get the extra washroom, right? And if you get the extra washroom, it's going to cost you an extra $1,600, right? So an extra washroom would cost you basically an extra $1,600 a month, and you're not wasting this money. You're not wasting this money then. So this is a big opportunity here. One little thing. And there's a lot more of this that goes on. It's not just this type of thing, getting the washrooms close to where the work is. It's pretty much everything. And you know, we'll think about that. But right now, I want to show you an income statement. All right, so let's say a construction company has big construction company, reasonably big, $100 million sales revenue in a year, right? And I don't care if you're a small company. If you got $1 million in sales revenue in a year, just get rid of some of the zeros. The numbers still work the same way, so it doesn't matter. You don't always talking about big. It doesn't matter. Small company, just move the zeros over. Labor, all right. So maybe they self-perform a lot of the work. So maybe they're a concrete forming company, maybe they're a plumbing company, whatever it may be. Self-perform 40 million of that amount. Materials 20 million. Equipment 4 million. Other subcontractors, $22 million. Total direct costs, $86 million. Gross profit, that's profit and overhead. Take off your overhead, right? So from your gross profit, subtract your overhead. There's what your profit very often is. You know, some of you can argue with me that it'd be more or less or whatever it is. It's not going to be like, you know, if you're being successful about it, it's not going to be less. But I don't want to people think that construction companies make 20%, 30% profit. That's not what happens. That's not what happens. Construction companies have fairly tight margins. The other problem overall with construction companies, sure, you might have a few projects you make 15% on, then you have a project that you lost 20% on, and that gouges out the ones that you gained on. So that's the other side of that. So let's say we're at 4 million. Let's say that we've got, and that's 40% of sales. Let's say we improve our productivity on our labor, just on our labor by 10%. By 10%. What does that do to our profit, right? So if we improve this by 10%, what does that do to our profit? I'll show you on the next slide, but think about it. So we take off 10% here on our labor because we're more productive, less waste. What's that going to do to our bottom line? Well, 10% of 40 million, that's 4 million, 36 million. This isn't changing. We just doubled our profit. We went from 4% to 8%. wow, that's a lot more than I thought it'd be, right? Like that's a lot more. And you know, that example I gave you with the washrooms, 10%. So, you know, there's these opportunities that are everywhere that we sometimes don't realize. And we kind of get, oh, it's construction. Start looking for these types of things. You know, the best companies, you want to look at companies throughout history. And if you listen, there's a really good podcast called The Founders Podcast. I highly recommend it. And you listen to these founders of the past, whether you're Rockefeller, Ford, Carnegie, and ones that I know in the construction industry today that are really successful. They think about these things. I know I've heard this about Madamian, the founder, and when he walks a site, if he's seen 2x4s in the mud, he'll say that's a loaf of bread. See some bricks that have been run over, that's a quart of milk or a liter of milk. And you put it in a different context, you think about it differently, right? So that's a really good sort of analogy to sort of really start thinking about this stuff. And some of you are saying 10%, Tom, that's a lot. Okay, fine. 10%'s a lot. Let's go with 5. That would be a 50% improvement in profit. That would be a $2 million gain. 2% improvement, that's a 20% improvement in profit. 1%, that's a 10% improvement profit. That's a $400,000 gain. So you got to start somewhere, and I would really be thinking about this. You know, this is I think the one I can tie the best to, like, directly straight in your pocket kind of money, because what you're trying to do here is really control your costs, and you're trying to come up with ways that you don't waste motion. And what are some of the causes? Poor site layout, disorganized workstations, inefficient placement of tools, materials, equipment, an unclean site, lack of clear communication or task planning. You can also see how some of these things come together from previous videos, like I talked about inventory, things in your way, you're having to go around them, it's slowing you down. Tools stored far from the work area, not making it easy for yourself. This one's actually is pretty good, but it's just nice clean site. But making sure that you don't have something like this going on, where things are just like, I've gotta like go through like I'm going through a maze to get where I need to go, right? So you're trying to keep it much better organized. And I was driving along and I took this picture. I saw the back of this truck. Like, how are you going to find everything? Now, think of all the wasted motion when you're looking for tools and equipment in the back of this truck. It's going to be very, very difficult, and you're wasting a lot of time. And that time adds up to being money, as opposed to finding something in this truck. Look, all basically the putty knives, basically the drills, the chargers, everything nice and neat and clean and lined up everywhere. Extra tape measures, you name it. This truck, is really well organized. And that's another area we'll talk about in another video, the 5 S's. I've talked about it before, but I'll talk about it again. This is, I'm putting this as an observation aspect. Taiichi Ohno, he's basically referred to as the father of the Toyota production system. He used to draw a chalk line in the middle of the manufacturing floor and stand there and watch, or he would encourage different workers to do the same thing, so that you would intuitively see the processes that are going on and observe them, take them in, and then look for the opportunities of improving your productivities. It was to force people to notice inefficiencies, to open their eyes to these things, and to focus on things like unnecessary motion. It really, it takes some training to be looking for these things. It's not that easy. It takes a while. You have to work at it. But if you become good at this, the sky's the limit. If it's your company, you're going to really improve the company, especially when you can create a culture where people start thinking that way. And if you're one of the workers that thinks that way and you work for me, why would I ever want you to leave? I want to make sure that I promote you, I pay you well, and encourage your ideas, because your ideas are really good. So when we think about that, it's really, really helpful. And so some of the things that we can do when looking at minimizing waste, there's technologies that are coming onto play that can help us, right? It can be from wearable technology that can help to track worker movements. It can be from step counters that you're looking at steps, how many steps are taken, and basically is there ways of reducing that. BIM, building information modeling, laying out how materials will flow through the site and thinking about it from a very logistic point of view. And this is where we can be very helpful in a lot of aspects using BIM, not just on wasted motion, it's also on zoning and smaller batch sizes and improving flow. It's making sure that we don't have stacking of workers that are in each other's way with materials. So there's a lot of things that we can do to help improve our layouts of site that can reduce our motion from that perspective. And sometimes we have quite complex projects where it's really helpful to do animations, tie it to schedules and the movement of materials and people through the site. So what we really want to do is empower workers to eliminate wasted motion, train to identify and avoid unnecessary movements. Your frontline people are the ones that know the best on a lot of this stuff. We've got to make sure that we're engaging them and we're getting them to turn the light on, that we care about these ideas that they may have, right? So we really want to encourage these workers to organize their workstation and keep materials within reach. And then we want to figure out, how do we share that information across the organization, right? Because there's these really good ideas that are going to come up, right? That's that non-utilized talent that we talked about before. Well, now you're utilizing them. How do we get that across the organization? So that's part of the promoting the culture of continuous improvement, where workers suggest proactively layout improvements. There's a number of things that we can do for that. We can have a team meeting to discuss ways to improve efficiency, basically brainstorm on certain things. We can implement a 5S system. 5S is basically that we want to, it's 5S headings, and it's from the Toyota production system. We want to sort things out, get rid of things that we're not using. We want to set things in place that it's very easy to organize. We want to make sure everything is spotlessly clean. So that's the shine aspect. We want to standardize it so it becomes easy to do. If you make stuff easy, it can happen, right? And then we want to set in the aspects of routine and ritual and repetition so we can sustain it over time. That's important. All right. So that's the 5S, and we'll get into that in other videos. And I'm going to talk about first run studies in another video as well. But that's where we hone in on something and we pick something and we say, we're going to improve on this. And so we're going to work on this because we can see there's a lot of waste in this. And so this is a low-hanging fruit, like the washroom, where we could save substantial money on it. Sometimes these first run studies, when you pick something in construction, it's something that it might take you 2 days to do the first run study, to make up some special equipment that'll work, and to implement it. And that 2 days that you spend saves like $50, $60, $100,000, right? So for 2 days work to save $100,000, 2 days work for maybe 3 people, that is well worth it. So that's where first run studies come in, or also get people encouraged the aspect of the Ono circle. You don't have to necessarily draw a circle in chalk, but you're actually positioning yourself where you're observing, 10 or 15 minutes of the workflow during the day, and you're actually thinking about it from a wasted motion perspective. So that's what I wanted to cover today. I hope you found this helpful. Please give comments, examples. I know from the people that are on my channel, I've had millions of views now. I know that you're all over the planet and you've got some interesting comments that you're always making. If you've got some interesting examples, share it with the community. People do read these descriptions and your comments, and we can make these discussion points on the 8 areas of waste. And please click the subscribe, the like icons. That helps to make this channel more and more viable as far as people wanting to watch it. Okay, so have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. And the next one coming up will be extra processing. Oh boy, a lot of stuff in extra processing. Bye for now.